She wasn't the tallest. She wasn't the curviest. She didn't look like the supermodels before her. But that's exactly why the whole world couldn't take their eyes off her. Kate Moss wasn't just a model. She's a symbol of a new era. One that was raw, rebellious, and dangerously thin. Magazines, designers, and brands made millions off her image, glorifying a look the world would later call heroin chic. But when the backlash ultimately came, when people started asking if fashion finally had gone too far, the industry needed someone to take all the blame. The media turned on her. The industry cut ties. Cocaine Kate, they call her. Contracts vanished into thin air, and her name was viciously dragged through the mud. The world that made her a star watched as she burned to the ground. But after all that, Kate Moss didn't just disappear and fizzle out. She came back stronger, richer, and more powerful than ever. This is the story of the supermodel that changed forever, and the dark truth behind the industry that tried to destroy her. The early 90s belonged to the supermodels. Cindy Crawford, Naomi Campbell, Claudia Schiffer, women who weren't just models, but untouchable icons. Tall, amazing stature, and commanding the runway like they owned the world. They weren't just selling fashion, they were selling a fantasy of power, beauty, and perfection. And then came Kate Moss. She wasn't tall, she wasn't curvy. She didn't have the slightest commanding presence of the supermodels before her. But that was exactly what made her stand out. In 1988, Kate was just a 14-year-old girl from Croydon, England. Awkward and polished and completely unaware of the industry she was about to disrupt. Modeling had never been a part of her plan. She didn't even think she was pretty. But fate had other ideas. While traveling through JFK Airport, Kate was spotted by Sarah Dukas, the founder of Storm Model Management. There was just something about Kate, something raw, unfiltered, and entirely unlike the polished perfection of the era's top models. She had no training, no experience, no idea what was coming next. Within a year, she was booked for her first major photo shoots. But no one, not even Kate herself, could have predicted just how fast she would take over the fashion world. In 1990, at just 16 years old, she landed a career-defining shoot for the Face magazine, captured by Corinne Day. The photos were unlike anything the industry had seen before. No heavy makeup, no elaborate styling. Just a freckled teenage girl in simple clothes, barefoot on a beach, looking almost fragile. And in that moment, fashion changed forever. The industry wasn't just intrigued, they were obsessed. Kate Moss wasn't like the supermodels before her. She was the anti-supermodel. Small, impossibly thin, and almost childlike. She wasn't powerful, she was vulnerable. And that made her the perfect blank canvas for what was coming next. By 1992, at just 18, she landed the campaign that would define her career, Calvin Klein. Paired with a young Mark Wahlberg, yes, the Mark Wahlberg, Kate appeared in a series of black and white ads that were stripped down, minimalist, and deeply intimate. She wasn't posing like a glamorous supermodel. She looked small, delicate, almost out of place next to Wahlberg's muscular frame. And yet, the world couldn't look away. Seemingly overnight, every major designer wanted her. Kate Moss had just killed the supermodel era and replaced it with something entirely new. But she had no idea that she wasn't just changing fashion. She was about to become the face of something much darker. Something the industry would later pretend they had nothing to do with. And something that, in time, would almost destroy her. The 1990s marked a massive shift in fashion. Gone were the glossy, sun-kissed supermodels of the previous decade. It was replaced by something raw, gritty, and unsettlingly real. The industry had grown tired of perfection. It craved rebellion, something that reflected the darker sense of youth culture. And at the center of it all was Kate Moss. With her sharp cheekbones, frail frame, and haunted expression, she became the face of a new controversial aesthetic, what the world would soon call heroin chic. But this look wasn't just about being thin. It was about appearing exhausted, detached, untouched by the appeal and glamour that fashion had once thrived on. Dark under-eye circles, pale skin, unkempt hair, an almost ghostly presence. This wasn't just a trend. It was a complete rejection of the excess and overindulgence of the supermodel era. And fashion was obsessed. Photographers like Corinne Day played a pivotal role in shaping the movement. Her now infamous 1993 Vogue shoot featuring Kate Moss was a stark contrast to traditional high fashion photography. The images were grainy, stripped down, intimate. And Kate? She was barely dressed, looking vulnerable, unposed, eerily natural. It wasn't just fashion, it was a statement. Designers and brands rushed to embrace the aesthetic. Calvin Klein, Prada, Marc Jacobs all want to ride the wave. Suddenly, runways were filled with models who didn't look like glamorous icons, but like kids who had been awake for 3 days straight. Heroin chic wasn't just a look. It was an attitude. Reckless, indifferent, untouchable. But as the trend gained momentum, so did the backlash. Critics accused the industry of glorifying drug addiction and dangerous body standards. The concern wasn't just about thinness. It was about the romanticization of self-destruction. These weren't just skinny models. They looked sick, distant, like they had lived through something tragic. The media latched onto the term heroin chic, and what had started as a fashion movement quickly turned into a full-blown scandal. By 1997, even President Bill Clinton publicly condemned the trend, stating that the fashion industry was sending a dangerous message by making drug use look glamorous. And he wasn't alone. By the early 2000s, Kate Moss was untouchable. She had survived the backlash of the heroin chic era. She had outlasted critics, secured contracts with every major fashion house, and cemented herself as more than just a model. She was an icon, a symbol of effortless cool, the definition of it girl mystique. But in September 2005, everything changed. A single photograph splashed across the front of the Daily Mirror sent shockwaves through the fashion world. Kate Moss, a table, and several lines of cocaine. The images taken inside a London recording studio allegedly showed Kate snorting cocaine during a late-night session with her then-boyfriend, Pete Doherty, the notoriously troubled frontman of the Libertines. And the media, they jumped right on it. Newspapers branded her Cocaine Kate. Headlines called her a disgrace. The same industry that had once worshipped her rebellious, rule-breaking image was now tearing her apart. And the fallout was swift. Within days, major brands rushed to distance themselves. H&M, Chanel, Burberry, 3 of her biggest contracts, gone. The very companies that had built entire campaigns around her suddenly wanted nothing to do with her. Her face, once plastered across every billboard, started vanishing overnight. Then came the police investigation. The London Metropolitan Police announced they were looking into the allegations. For weeks, tabloids speculated. Would Kate be arrested? Charged? Blacklisted from the industry? But in the end, nothing. Despite the international scandal, no charges were filed. There was no physical evidence. The media had painted her as the face of the drug problem in fashion, but legally, there was nothing they could do. But her name was already dragged through the mud. The damage has already been done. And the world thought she was finally finished. The world thought this was the end for Kate Moss. In the months after the massive scandal, Kate Moss suddenly disappeared. No interviews, no public statements, no apology tour. Most celebrities, after a scandal this big, would have gone into full damage control mode. A couple of tearful TV interviews, a charity campaign, a desperate attempt to prove they had changed. Kate Moss, she went silent. And that's what made her comeback legendary. Because while the media was tearing her down, the fashion world wasn't done with her. One of the first to stand by her side, Alexander McQueen. At the end of his 2006 runway show, McQueen walked onto the stage wearing a plain black t-shirt with 3 simple words. "We love you, Kate." It wasn't just a statement, it was a warning. Kate Moss wasn't going anywhere. And within a year, something unbelievable happened. The brands that had dropped her, they wanted her back. She re-signed with Burberry. She launched a fragrance. She designed her own collection for Topshop. And the money, it doubled. In 2006, the year after her so-called downfall, Kate Moss made more money than ever before. The industry that had turned on her so quickly suddenly realized something important. Kate Moss wasn't just a model. She was the brand. She didn't need fashion houses to survive. They needed her. And just like that, Kate Moss had done the impossible. She had pulled off the greatest comeback in fashion history. But that doesn't end there. Because today, Kate Moss isn't just a supermodel. She's a businesswoman, a mentor, a legend. Kate Moss didn't just survive one of the biggest scandals in fashion history. She came out bigger than ever. Today, she's more than just a model. She's a titan of the industry. While most supermodels of her era have faded into the background, Kate Moss is still everywhere. She's still walking runways, still gracing magazine covers, still fronting campaigns for luxury brands like Balenciaga, Saint Laurent, and Bottega Veneta. But the biggest shift? Kate Moss is no longer just a face of fashion. She's the one running the show. In 2016, she launched her own talent agency, Kate Moss Agency. No longer just a model, she's a mentor. She's shaping the next generation of talent, guiding them through an industry she once had to fight to survive. And the irony? The same industry that once tried to erase her, humiliate her, and use her as a scapegoat, now idolizes her. Young models like Bella Hadid, Kaya Gerber, and Kendall Jenner all cite her as their inspiration. The fashion world has changed. Magazines have been replaced by social media. Influencers have taken the place of supermodels. Trends move at the speed of a TikTok scroll. And yet, Kate Moss is still standing. She is living proof that scandals fade, but icons last forever. And maybe that's the real secret to her success. She never explained herself. She never defended herself. She never apologized for being Kate Moss. She simply kept going. Because fashion loves a comeback, but it worships those who never truly leave. And that's why, after decades in the industry, Kate Moss remains untouchable. This is Kate Moss, the face of fashion's dark side, and the woman who survived it all.